In this episode of Stecker Studios, we use watercolor pencil to add atmospheric perspective to our one-point perspective urban landscape drawings. I'm going to begin coloring in the sky first, applying slightly more pressure and adding more pigment to the upper part of the sky and leaving the lower part of the sky a little bit lighter. We're going to be adding atmospheric perspective. So this means that as things get further away, they become lighter in value, bluer or grayer in color, and have less details and textures. You can see in the mountains, of the three that I drew, the one that's closest to us is a darker green, whereas the furthest mountain begins to get more lighter and bluer. You can see now I've switched over to a brush. Because we're using watercolor pencils, we can use a wet brush to activate the watercolor pigment inside the pencil in order to turn this into a painting. Our street is a great place to accentuate the atmospheric perspective. In the foreground, I'm going to make the street much darker, and as it gets closer to the vanishing point, I'm going to make the street get lighter and lighter. To do this, I'm going to apply more pressure to add more pigment to the foreground and use less pigment further away in the distance. Now, while I switch back to a brush, I'm going to begin working in the background using more water and pulling the pigment closer to the foreground in order to help it get darker in the foreground and lighter in the background to help show atmospheric perspective. If you made a mistake while painting, one thing you can do to help erase it is to take a wet brush, wet the area where the mistake is, and either use a dry brush to soak the water and pigment back out, or use a paper towel. Some areas of your drawing might require a second layer in order to get the boldness of color that you're looking for. And especially if you're trying to show atmospheric perspective to help darken your colors, sometimes you may have to add that second layer. As I start to color in my buildings, I'm going to try to be a little creative with my color choices. For my first building, I'm going to color this one a nice red-orange color. In order to do that, I'm starting with the lighter color first. I'm starting with orange, a secondary color. And on top of this layer, I'm going to apply red, a primary color, in order to make the tertiary color red-orange. Take a look. For many of my buildings, I'm going to be mixing colors. The best way to do this is to apply the lighter color first and add the darker color right on top of it, a little bit at a time, in order to achieve the color that you're looking for. As my buildings get further into the distance, I'm going to make them get lighter and bluer and grayer in color. Now that I'm done with this set of buildings, I'm going to go back with the brush again in order to blend my colors and mix them together. You don't need to use a lot of water, just enough to get the brush wet and get the paint moving on the paper. Now, as you move from one color to the next, it's important to remember to wash your brush to remove any of the initial color. Otherwise, you'll mix these colors together. So throughout this drawing, I've tried to show atmospheric perspective by showing changes in value, color, and texture. Again, as things get further away, they get lighter in value, bluer or grayer in color, and have less textures and details. This is because as things get further away, light bouncing off these objects has to pass through more air and atmosphere. The air and atmosphere scatter the light as it approaches our eyes, causing these effects to occur. Adding atmospheric perspective to our one-point perspective drawing helps to accentuate and increase the sense of depth in our drawing, making it look more realistic and 3D. To color the windows, I'm going to use the same light blue I used on the sky to show that the windows are casting some reflection of it. I'm going to leave a little bit of the window alone to leave the white paper behind in order to show some kind of a shine or reflection. Now I can go back in and smooth out my colors with a wet paintbrush. To increase the degree of realism, I'm going to add some cast shadows. Remember to keep the edge of your shadow aligned with the vanishing point. The color I chose to do this is violet. I think violet produces a nice rich color for a shadow. It's dark and has a nicer effect than using black, which tends to flatten out the areas that you're coloring. A few last minute details on the signs, and this one's done. Thank you for watching Stecker Studios. Please like and subscribe.